there were at least 18 cases where they had data from multiple sensors showing objects that moved in ways that could not be explained.
What was once science fiction is now science fact.
For years, pilots and military personnel were afraid to tell others what they saw.
When it comes to the UFO phenomenon, there is a completely different agenda being promoted to the public by government than that which has actually been employed. The real agenda has been built on years of silence, half-truths, and lies. While the world is enticed with what many people believe to be imminent disclosure, vassal states, to include the Vatican, have already ceded their power and freedom to these approaching alien gods and are preparing for their return. However, far from bearing good gifts for mankind, their arrival will bring destruction to a world that is already teetering on the brink.
Based upon their established history and documents recovered through the Freedom of Information Act, we know that the CIA and the military-industrial complex as a whole has purposely misled the public when it comes to UFOs. They have a track record of half-truths, outright lies, and cover-ups. And we've seen it time and time again through the decades, over and over and over.
In his usual unconventional and candid way, the late George Carlin once echoed the thoughts of the average person where UFOs are concerned. To my way of thinking, there is every bit as much evidence for the existence of UFOs as there is for the existence of God. He also said, at least in the case of UFOs, there have been countless taped and filmed and, by the way, unexplained sightings from all over the world, along with documented radar evidence seen by experienced military and civilian radar operators. To Carlin's point, there are almost as many people who believe in UFOs compared to those who believe in God, 81% versus 65%.
We will now turn to the business of this hearing. More than 50 years ago, the U.S. government ended Project Blue Book, an effort to catalog and understand sightings of objects in the air that could not otherwise be explained.
At the recent congressional hearings on UFOs, there appeared to be a disconnect between the reality of what is truly going on in our skies versus 80 years of government cover-ups and outright lying to the public. Many people interviewed said that the televised hearing felt forced.
Reports of sightings are frequent and continuing.
And it appeared that Congress only held the proceedings to appease the populace. If Carlin was still alive, he would have agreed. As he said, real evidence of UFOs have been obvious for years. Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee appeared on News Nation in defense of those same views.
Does the Pentagon know more than they're saying?
100%. We need to start addressing it, because if these, whatever they are, have control of the air like that, it's a national defense issue for us. I think there's an arrogance in government at that level. It's a bogus cover-up. It doesn't fit, and it's about power and it's about control. We're asking the Pentagon to investigate something that they covered up.
This is the denial letter for information that the congressman was referring to in response to the Freedom of Information Act request. In it, the military and our own government appears to be slamming the lid on any further release of information regarding UFOs. In writing, the Deputy Director from the Freedom of Information Act office, Gary Kaysen, said, the UAP task force has responded back to the DNS-36 request and stated that the requested videos contain sensitive information pertaining to unidentified aerial phenomena and are classified and are exempt from disclosure in their entirety under exemption and in accordance with executive order. The release of this information will harm national security, as it may provide adversaries valuable information regarding Department of Defense and Navy operations, vulnerabilities, and/or capabilities. No portions of the video can be segregated for release. And how exactly could this information harm national security?
I think we're probably reverse engineering some of it, because the enormous amounts of it that are in military installations or in reserved areas. I mean, it's so compartmentalized A lot of the people that are probably working on it don't even know they're working on it.
According to at least one of our political leaders, our military may have reversed engineered aircraft whose origins are, according to Congressman Tim Burchett, out of this world. Will the military and the government eventually come clean on the whole UFO phenomenon? Probably not. And if we are to ever hear the truth about this issue, it may likely fall to the aliens to disclose themselves. And so, we wait.
October of 2017 in Seattle, Washington, a man named Lou Elizondo walked out onto a stage and made a startling announcement. We, the public, have been told by our Pentagon, by our government, that it has no interest in UFOs, that it stopped studying UFOs in 1969 with the end of Project Blue Book. We don't care. It's not a matter of national security. We're not interested. We don't take reports anymore. Well, of course, they've been lying. And we have all known they've been lying. But until last October, we didn't have someone who had worked for the program who came forward and said it. And Lou Elizondo was in charge of something called ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And that program is ongoing today. I don't know what it's called, but I'm telling you right now, it is underway, it's active, it's collecting information from various Pentagon organizations and departments and delivering that information to Congress. Officially, the Pentagon says ATIP is ended. They're lying about that. They've said that Lou Elizondo didn't work on it. They've lied about that. They've said that ATIP wasn't about flying saucers, and they've lied about that.
Mankind is being prepared for the biggest deception in human history with the help and complicitness of our own governments and that of the institutionalized Catholic Church. We will soon see the world's full surrender to the alien agenda. These returning gods will be hailed as kings and saviors. Yet in reality, we've been warned about their true fallen identities and motives throughout Scripture. Those warnings will fall on deaf ears as the world welcomes them with open arms. And it will be this embracing of these fallen beings that will accelerate the end of time. Because if those days were not cut short, there would be no flesh left alive. In his position as an investigative reporter in Las Vegas, Nevada, 30 years ago, a young George Knapp broke the story of Bob Lazar and his work at a top-secret government facility called S4, a few miles south of Area 51, otherwise known as Groom Lake. There, as a young scientist, Lazar was tasked with reverse engineering recovered alien spacecraft, antimatter reactors, and other alien technology. Specifically, Lazar said that he and the other scientists worked on 9 recovered flying saucer-type craft at the S4 location, and stressed that all of them were unique in design. Knapp's interview with Lazar was at one time the most watched video on YouTube and still fascinates people today. Recently, a much older Lazar sat down with radio show host Joe Rogan to discuss the origins of those spacecraft.
They still have these things, supposedly.
I would guess. I mean, I don't have any information on that.
Have you ever asked anyone where they got them or how they got them?
No, but I think at least one of them was part of an archaeological dig. So it's old. At least one of them is old. I don't know if it was the one I worked on, but I remember something to do with an archaeological dig.
Whoa.
So that means it's not just old, it's ancient.
And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives, all of which they chose. There were giants in the earth in those days, And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown.
In the pseudepigraphal books, such as the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, and others, fallen angels were referred to as the Watchers. And specifically, in the Bible's Genesis 6 narrative, we see how beings from heaven, fallen angels, came down to earth to mate with human women. It also talks about how those same beings corrupted all of mankind and nature with their genetic influence. Interestingly, over the last few years, like the archaeologists that found the alien spacecraft which Bob Lazar helped reverse engineer, Gen 6 Productions, our archaeological team has uncovered ancient archaeological artifacts from deep within the Mexican soil. These relics speak of the visitation to Earth by fallen angels, the Nephilim masquerading as aliens. The artifacts depict winged and reptilian creatures, spacecraft, pyramids, and more. From the stories that they tell, we see the same old lie. First, aliens show up to befriend mankind and help them, then they turn on them. As the world cries out for disclosure and the unveiling of these alien saviors, this treachery will happen again very soon. But their deception will be the greatest to ever dupe humanity, and it will usher in the Antichrist.
People presume that disclosure and biblical end times events may occur sometime in the distant future. However, evidence shows that these affairs are playing out right now, in real time. For instance, the 2021 COP23 climate conference was held in Glasgow, Scotland. King Charles gave the keynote speech, and in attendance were world leaders from nearly every nation on planet Earth. During his address, Charles spoke directly from prepared notes from which he appeared not to deviate. Clearly, this was no simple speech on climate change.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us just how devastating a global cross-border threat can be. We have to put ourselves on what might be called a warlike footing, to act with all dispatch and decisively, because time has quite literally run out. The scale and scope of the threat we face call for a global systems-level solution. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector. With trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders, it offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition.
Again, the king used prepared notes that he did not deviate from. So, who exactly is this person to whom Charles is referring when he mentioned his? Never once in his speech did the king identify who this person was, but the audience of world leaders appeared to know exactly to whom the king was referring.
With trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders.
According to the king's words, and these world leaders' consent, they intend to wield a militaristic-type force to ensure climate compliance, and also plan to turn over the whole world's economic assets to this person or entity to whom Charles is referring. Yet, they do not disclose who this person is. Why? Because in reality, this truth is the stuff of nightmares. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. In the original Greek language that this verse was written, the phrase, the world forces, literally translates as ruler of this world. This is an extremely important point in the context of our investigation. When the translation nuances of the verse are considered, it is striking to see how the verse can specifically be applied to the alien deception that is occurring right now, right under the noses of an unsuspecting public. Make no mistake, something wicked this way comes. In their quest for knowledge about UFOs and aliens, mankind has unwittingly subjected themselves to an evil that they have yet to comprehend. Not unlike Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End, this incoming threat is so sinister that by the time humanity understands the peril that they have placed themselves in, it will be too late. However, unlike that book, these aliens may not necessarily look demonic or evil. The Bible says that Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. It is in this disguise as an extraterrestrial that he sets the snare for all of planet Earth.
I was speaking with a high-ranking military member that wants to remain anonymous, but he's involved in, some of the work that's going on. And I asked him, I'm like, come on, the public's ready. You can tell us because no one's going to freak out. Chile and France openly investigate UFO reports. No mass suicides, no people running around trying to hit the hills, no one grabbing their food storage. I'm like, people can handle it. And he put his head down and he said, Chase, all I can tell you right now is I believe the public could handle the truth if we were just talking about non-human, intelligent beings coming to Earth and interacting with us. But what if it's more complicated than that? What if some of this is sinister or not in our best interest? And that's all he would say. It really started thinking about, he's right. If it was what we think it is, we could handle the truth. But what if they don't know either?
What is their interest in us? We don't know the answers to any of those. We know that it is alien, and I use sort of air quotes around the word alien. Doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial. It might be. It might be extraterrestrial, or ultra-terrestrial, or crypto-terrestrial, or interdimensional. They might be time travelers. And I wouldn't have used this word maybe 10 years ago, but I'm going to use it now, and I think it would be of interest to this audience, demonic.
With a desperate outcry, the public is openly calling for disclosure. For their part, as they've done for decades, the government tries to placate the masses with empty promises, phony hearings, and more red tape.
When it comes to material that we have no material. We have detected no emanations within the UAP task force that would suggest it's anything non-terrestrial.
However, their lies are transparent to the UFO truther community. But there is one sovereign government that is taking the arrival of aliens very seriously. They've put up hundreds of millions of dollars in preparation for their arrival and even changed their own rules on how they address the issue. Who is this sovereign country? Why, the Vatican, of course.
As we have previously documented, the Vatican has taken drastic steps in preparation for the arrival of Earth's alien saviors. However, what most people will not understand is that these new arrivals are not new at all. They are ancient fallen angels who have been biding their time until they could be revealed as mankind's alien saviors. These are the lies of men and gods.
If you want to change somebody's worldview, you don't just come out of the gate with an argument that is diametrically opposed to everything they believe. You use the Fabian process of gradualism. You send out these little softballs like, well, if there was an alien intelligence, we would be willing to baptize them into the Catholic faith because, after all, if they exist, they must be part of creation, so they're part of what God made. Little by little, they've changed that, though, and they've went to now saying it's very possible that the alien intelligence is morally superior to us, because what we know about ourselves is that we are fallen, but we can't assume the same thing about the aliens. Therefore, our space brothers may know more about God and the gospel than we do. Therefore, they will be coming here to baptize us. into a better understanding of the Godhead. It won't be us baptizing them. So the language has continued to change.
We often see in science fiction stories that aliens are here to either save us or they're here to destroy us. That's because rather than looking at the God of the Bible as an alternative, people will associate the projection of heavenly beings such as aliens as the ideal of what's transcendent and above humans as far as intelligence goes and where morality is concerned. The problem is, of course, what happens when those aliens, those heavenly beings, are not what they appear to be? Scientists, philosophers, theologians have all been having this exact conversation for centuries. They often muse that if something really is out there, how would it impact the world's major religions, especially those who view human beings as a special creation from a higher being?
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Even Pope Francis stated that he would baptize aliens sight unseen. But rather than just talking about the what-ifs, the Vatican is taking active steps to welcome our so-called space brothers.
Some of the Opus Dei level theologians at the Pontifical Academy in Rome, as well as the Pope's University in Rome, are working on doctrine that very specifically has to do with religious information of an extraterrestrial source and what the impact of that might be on faith on Earth. They seem to be preparing themselves. And not just, well, what if, maybe someday. I mean, they seem to be intentionally creating dogma that is going to position the Roman Catholic Church to be at the forefront of an official disclosure moment.
Now, imagine the Vatican formulating an alien deception insidiously woven over the biblical narrative. This duplicity will be reinforced with supposed ancient physical evidence which has been locked away in the Vatican archives for centuries. In fact, the fabrication will be so convincing that the average person will not be able to see the truth from the myth. The Vatican will declare to the world that Jesus was an extraterrestrial. They will say that he is from an alien species, which is not only more technologically advanced than human, but is morally superior to mankind in every way. They will tell the story of panspermia and how these aliens seeded life on planet Earth. And as such, they will say that they are our gods. And most people will absolutely believe them.
Is there something more to the Vatican driving this alien agenda? Do they have information that the general public doesn't? Or have they been influenced by a different belief system, one so far removed from the Bible that now, on the precipice of disclosure, they must incorporate strange and otherworldly beliefs into their own doctrine? The answer is more stunning than you know. It's also a lie that has taken decades, even centuries, to propagate into not only Vatican thinking, but the belief system of humanity throughout the world. From pop culture to science fiction movies to fringe scientists, it seems that everyone is looking for an alternative to the biblical creation story. This idea is called panspermia, and it's the belief that aliens seeded mankind's DNA on planet Earth.
And by the way, the Dead Sea Scrolls also support the idea that the Watchers were dark and reptilian in terms of their physical makeup.
A strange story came out of Hove, England in 2008. And if it were not for some corroborating information from history, it could easily be discarded as being told from someone with too much imagination. The account includes a 20-year-old young woman named Charmaine, who was roused out of a dead sleep to find a reptilian humanoid standing at her bedside. She was then spirited away to an underground reptilian grotto of sorts. The tale goes on to say that she was surrounded by several other reptilians and caused to change into a human hybrid reptilian herself. She was then told by her hosts that all humans are the result of reptilian-driven panspermia and have been genetically manipulated. As far-fetched as her story sounds, it does have some semblance to ancient stories related by Native Americans. There is also a story of a reptilian giant from the 1800s that was captured and later escaped. This story might seem fanciful, but was actually reported in the Weekly Advertiser from Montgomery, Alabama on July 17, 1877. The account was also related by several eyewitnesses. When the creature escaped, it was believed to have went underground. There are many other accounts of reptilian humanoids that live under the earth, and it is because of those accounts that Charmaine's story cannot be dismissed out of hand. Ancient astronaut theory, and specifically panspermia, was given a big boost in 1976 by a previously unknown author named Zecharia Sitchin. His road to fringe megastardom is interesting at best and disturbing at worst, speaking from a biblical perspective. Sitchin was Jewish by birth and born in Soviet-held Azerbaijan in 1920. Eventually, his family immigrated to what would become Israel, and he was raised and educated in a traditional Jewish home where he spoke fluent Hebrew. Because of his curiosity about various passages in the Bible, specifically the Genesis 6 narrative, he also eventually learned to read and interpret the ancient Sumerian and Akkadian languages. Through somewhat dubious sources, he obtained information about an interloping planet in our solar system called Nibiru. According to Sitchin, this planet is on a long elliptical orbit around our sun and supposedly makes an appearance near Earth every 3,600 years. However, his error in translation of both the Hebrew text and Sumerian cuneiform tablets put him on a dangerous path where he would aid the previously mentioned Nephilim to deceive many. During an early lecture, Sitchin lamented a childhood story about how his Bible teacher chastised him for saying that the language in Genesis 6 literally meant those who have descended and who have come down from the heavens to earth. He goes on to say that it was this experience which was the catalyst that launched him down the path to find the truth. Eventually, that search caused him to study the ancient Sumerian culture and their writings. Through his translation of the 14 Sumerian clay tablets of Enki, Sitchin came to the conclusion that the Sumerians documented a tale of aliens known as the Anunnaki.
In addition to the ample evidence of the Nephilim in the Bible, other pseudepigraphal books such as the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, the Book of Jasher, and the Book of Jubilees clearly show that the Nephilim, what Sitchin called the Anunnaki, were in fact fallen angels.
Sitchin said that according to the ancient Sumerians, the Anunnaki originally came to Earth some 445,000 years ago, when their planet, Nibiru, became locked into an elliptical orbit around our sun. According to Sitchin, that orbit returns these Anunnaki to our solar system every 3,600 years. Sitchin said that the Sumerian clay tablets told the story of how Nibiru's atmosphere was failing and the aliens needed gold to fix it. So, according to Sitchin, the Anunnaki originally came to Earth to mine for gold. He also said that it was their intent to use the inhabitants of the planet as slave labor to accomplish the task. However, the aliens thought that a more intelligent and robust creature was needed for the mining operation, rather than Homo erectus, who populated Earth 445,000 years ago. This leads to perhaps the most stunning claim by Sitchin. According to his translation, the Anunnaki genetically manipulated Homo erectus, a precursor to the Neanderthals, and created Homo sapiens from them. In other words, through panspermia, it was Sitchin's contention that the Anunnaki made Homo sapiens, thus are mankind's progenitors. aliens as our creators is exactly the lie that many UFO enthusiasts embrace today.
The idea that aliens are mankind's creators is not a new one. Even Genesis 6 says that the Nephilim, fallen angels, mated with human women. These women bore the Nephilim's children who would become the Rephaim, better known as the giants. However, with Sitchin's writing success and lectures, his viewpoint of panspermia gained broader appeal to people without a biblical worldview. Interestingly, our archaeological team in Mexico has uncovered evidence of such genetic manipulation by aliens on humans as depicted on numerous artifacts buried for thousands of years.
It's like a pyramidal shape, bro. Got a giant DNA strand over here. We know that these fallen angels love to modify the human genetic code. Empieza a quitar esto ya, carnal. It's a pyramid, bro. La brocha. Well, we definitely got an angel, fallen angel. Wow, this is amazing. This is definitely amazing, bro. And here we got a specter-like fallen angel. Let's find the other piece before I start. There has to be the top part to this. Here it is. Bam, baby. We're in like Flynn. We got it. We hit the jackpot. Okay. So we got the top to the pyramid. The pyramidal structures are a representation, as I have mentioned earlier, the gateway to the gods. It's also a representation of the high places. It's a representation of the mountains. It's a representation of what the gods love. And I'm talking about the small G gods. They love to present and be worshipped and receive sacrifice and adorations in high places, just like this mountain that we're on. If we see here, we have the fallen angel holding up that case, which is in resemblance to technology handed and given to man. You see that the fallen angel right here playing with the human DNA strand right here at the bottom. Here it is. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna take this up for you, and I'll give you guys my thoughts as to what I think it is. If you can see this circular type artifact that has many occult inscriptions on it. A lot of them are Egyptian, a lot of them are universal, but one thing that really stands out to me is, if you notice, we could just give you a real good close-up right here, you can see that in the midst and in the dead center, from the top to the bottom, you see a DNA strand working its way down through all of the occult symbols. Now, the DNA strand is a clear-cut example of the type of wisdom, the type of technology, the type of knowledge and understanding that has been handed down from these fallen angels to the human race. On the other side of this piece, we have a fallen angel with an elongated skull, with an orb floating above the palm of his hand as his hand is extended out.
The corruption effort of mankind by these evil fallen angels has not stopped in our modern 21st century. It is, in fact, accelerating at an ever-increasing end times pace. Only this time, they are corrupting whole swaths of humanity's DNA using vaccines and...
What the Swedish study shows is that the mRNA injections can travel throughout the body and it causes alteration of the chromosomes that's in the nuclei of your body's cells. In other words, it's rewriting your chromosomal DNA. And that means that when those cells reproduce, they are reproducing with the new pattern that is non-human. In other words, the mRNA instructions change the actual genetic code, making you something less than 100% human. When these mRNA instructions alter the chromosomes in the nuclei of your cells, and those cells begin to reproduce, then you become a chimeric hybrid organism that is something not fully human. But we have at least 20 million people who have already been killed by these vaccines, and that number will rapidly escalate to hundreds of millions, or even eventually, over the next few years, could exceed 1 billion people. But even these numbers do not approach the goals of the globalists that want to kill billions of people, which means they have to continue to roll out more fake pandemics, more health emergencies, and demand more shots and injections to achieve a higher fatality rate than what is currently being observed.
And what about the people that remain alive?
mRNA technology takes a human body and transforms it into a biomedical suicide bomber that poisons itself from the inside and even poisons the people around you through shedding. It's one of the most evil technologies that's ever been produced on our planet, even more so than atomic weapons or nuclear bombs.
The question remains, has humanity been subjected to this kind of genetic manipulation in the past? The answer is more than disturbing. As intriguing as Gen 6's archaeological finds are that point to the evidence of fallen angel manipulation of human DNA, there is also modern scientific confirmation of ancient genetic alteration of humans in antiquity. According to mainstream science and history books, this technology could not have existed anywhere on Earth in ancient times. As such, given this affirmation, such xenogenesis modifications to humans in ancient times must have been the direct result of technology brought to Earth by fallen angels. Case in point, Pharaoh Akhenaten, also known as Amenhotep IV, ruled Egypt 3,400 years ago. From a long lineage of Egyptian pharaohs, he was the father to Tutankhamun and the husband of Nefertiti. He was also known to have strange facial and body features, with the most notable being his oversized head. Scientists and researchers voiced much speculation over the years about the causes for his appearance. But it was the recent release of results from a completed 7-year genetic study on the pharaoh that answered some of those questions. However, many of those answers stunned the scientific world. The evidence showed that 3,400 years ago, Akhenaten's DNA was deliberately manipulated. Through the testing of dried brain tissue and bone samples retrieved from his mummy, it was determined that the amount of the pharaoh's CXPAC-5 gene was significantly and unexplainably increased. This caused a significant increase in his cortical activity and cranial development. That activity and development necessitated him having a larger skull because his brain was so much physically larger than other humans. Big brain, big skull. In addition, the bone tissue from Akhenaten's skull was viewed under a microscope and compared to other mummies of the same era. It was found that his tissue was much denser and stronger than all the others, and significantly so. Further, the lead scientist on the project, Professor Stuart Fleischmann, related that there were nucleotide cicatrix in the samples. This indicated a long-term exposure to strong mutagens, which is a genetic marker for DNA helix healing. With modern genetics, such treatment is only now becoming effective and plausible. However, Akhenaten's treatment appears to give results that far outpace even our modern genetic techniques. There is no human mutation known in all of modern medicine that could have caused Akhenaten's increase in CXPAC-5 activity, or the denseness of his skull bone, or the appearance of DNA helix healing in his cells. According to science, he should not have any of these abnormalities. The only conclusion that Fleischmann could come up with was that this outcome was intentional and a direct result of genetic manipulation. No one on Earth had the technology to achieve this kind of genetic alteration to Akhenaten cells. Therefore, the only conclusion one can deduce is that fallen angels, masquerading as aliens, utilized advanced gene therapy to change the pharaoh from a mere mortal into something else. Just as Genesis 6 points out, the Nephilim have not ceased to corrupt mankind throughout history. Zechariah Sitchin was convinced that the Nephilim, spoken of in Genesis 6, were in fact the Anunnaki, as mentioned in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets. As a proof for his theory, he reasoned that if Sumerians knew details about astronomy and our solar system, they could only have received that information from the spacefaring Anunnaki.
The Sumerians numbered the planets, and they referred to Earth as the seventh planet. It occurred to me that only somebody who is coming from the outside in would call Earth the seventh planet. If the Sumerians were right about the makeup of the solar system, how could they know that? And the Sumerians said, we know it because those who had come from that planet to Earth have told us.
There is a problem with Sitchin's belief in the Anunnaki and Nibiru's traversing the solar system. It comes from the fact that many scholars have vehemently disagreed with Sitchin's translation of those clay tablets. But more importantly, the ultimate source of his enlightenment was extremely questionable. So how did Sitchin conclude that the Nephilim were aliens instead of fallen angels? Simple. He heard it straight from their mouths.
In a lecture, Sitchin spoke about how he was frustrated during the writing of his first book, The 12th Planet, in 1975. The brunt of that frustration was the experts' disagreement with Sitchin's translation and interpretation of the Sumerian tablets and his view on Nibiru. Consequently, after making no progress on the manuscript for months, he asked for help from a very questionable and sinister source.
One evening, very frustrated, and I said out loud to whoever, and I said, Nephilim, I say, if you exist, please tell me, what is Nibiru? And I woke up in the middle of the night with the answer. And then everything from that morning on fell into place.
Sitchin's belief in the Anunnaki and their true identity went far deeper than thinking they were aliens. To bring his views into perspective, Gen 6 Productions was able to secure an exclusive interview with a very close friend of the writer. That confidant gave us a stunning revelation about Sitchin's thoughts on the true nature of the Anunnaki.
The idea of Zechariah, we have been talking a long time about this, was that Lucifer is one of these Anunnaki running this planet. This is an alive being living for thousands of years, and he lives inside Earth. Sitchin was completely sure that there are cities underground where these people, these extraterrestrial lives.
Sitchin literally asked the Nephilim, the fallen angels, to reveal themselves to him and to tell him about the planet Nibiru and the Anunnaki. We have the testimony from Sitchin's close friend Faramonti that Sitchin told him the ancient astronaut theorists fervently believed that the leader of the Anunnaki was Lucifer. Further, he was of the opinion that Lucifer physically lived on planet Earth underground. With such a strong belief, one must wonder how Sitchin came to this understanding. Did he hear it straight from the Nephilim, the fallen angels, or even perhaps Lucifer himself? And since we know from the Bible that Lucifer was a liar from the beginning, we should hold everything that the fallen angels told Sitchin as suspect. While some of what the Anunnaki told Sitchin may have been partial truths, you can bet that the rest was laced with lies and deception designed to bring about mankind's ultimate demise. However, the fallen angels not only lied to Sitchin about their true nature, they also deceived one of the most powerful organizations on Earth into thinking that the aliens were incoming.
All right. Father, the Vatican has a very, very great deal of power.
That's right.
They muscled their way onto a mountain in Arizona, Mount Graham, and they built an observatory on Mount Graham, looking at deep space things.
That's right.
Now, why would they have done that, Father?
Because the attitude, the mentality among the highest levels of Vatican administration and Vatican geopolitics know that now knowledge of what's going on in space and what's approaching us could be of great import in the next 5 years, 10 years.
Well, we were wanting to get to the bottom of all of that. Why are they saying the things that they're saying? And so Chris Putnam and I decided that the only way that we could know for sure was we had to go to the Jesuits ourselves. We had to go to their astronomers, and specifically, we had to go to the top of Mount Graham in Arizona, where there is an observatory. The Vatican's Advanced Technology Telescope is only one of 3 telescopes. They also use the apparatus that is inside what's called the Large Binocular Telescope, which is the largest telescope in the world, and it's on the top of Mount Graham. We met with the Jesuit who was on duty, very cordial, also very open, and some of his answers were astonishing, but the one that I found to be the most intriguing was when he told us that the Vatican now only uses the Advanced Telescope for one purpose, one. He said, and that is to monitor exo-worlds on which they believe the conditions exist for extraterrestrial life. Now, that might have been a real tell about what it is they're watching on the top of that mountain that they think might be approaching the Earth, as Malachi Martin said. There's a point where I think we're up 7 stories or something, and now we're looking down onto the top of the giant twin mirrors, and you see me and Chris standing there, and the engineer standing there with a laser pointer, and he points down to the middle of the twin mirrors where there's a large red device down in there, and you hear him saying, "This is the Lucifer device." And that's exactly what they call it. In fact, they lovingly call it Lucy. The Lucifer device is the most advanced form of infrared technology. So what this device does, it allows the twin towers to capture images from deep space using the infrared spectrum, which allows it to see through space debris and dust further into space, and in that sense, further back in time.
Of course, Lucifer is an acronym for a much longer title. But the real question is, why would the Catholic Church pick that specific name to go on the Vatican telescope? Unless they secretly wanted to pay homage to the being that they know as Lucifer, which, given the testimony we've heard, might well be the case. You may remember that Faramonte told us that Sitchin absolutely believed that Lucifer is in fact the head Anunnaki and that he is running planet Earth. We know that Lucifer is a fallen angel, or actually a fallen cherub to be specific. If Sitchin is correct in saying that the creature we know as Satan is now literally, physically on Earth, the implications are terrifying, but they are biblical.
Does the devil really now reside on planet Earth? In the book of Luke, Jesus specifically said to his disciples, "I watched Satan fall from heaven like lightning." Fall from heaven to earth? And in the book of Revelation, it pointedly says, "Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you with great wrath, knowing that he has only a short time. Could this alien that Zecharia Sitchin knew of as Lucifer really be the ancient evil one that the Bible says is the devil? Nibiru's arrival may answer this question. However, will that celestial body bring truth, or the greatest deception in human history?
The Church of Rome has been around for nearly 2,000 years. During that time, the Romans conquered numerous civilizations, many of which had pagan and occult practices. But rather than expunging these beliefs from those civilizations, the Catholic Church embraced them and made them part of their dogma. And you can go even further back to the Babylonian mystery religion on the plains of Shinar, which they have also incorporated into their practices. For all its wealth, its pomp and circumstance, and for all its air of legitimacy, it is no more than the combination of all of those religions and paganism. For those who are paying attention, the Vatican's true nature is even more evident as they add the alien agenda to their list of beliefs.
Many years ago, during an interview, I said something that still nowadays seems to be controversial about the involvement of Zecharia Sitchin with the Vatican. He, let's say, participated in this ongoing connection in the late years of Zecharia Sitchin. He participated to project together with the Vatican, with a guy called Corrado Balducci, who is a demonologist, turned ufologist by necessity. He talked about aliens, and somebody in the Vatican talking about aliens was back then an unheard thing. Now we have, of course, the Jesuits, and they are openly for the alien. But this wasn't so in the 90s when Corrado Balducci came out with this. Balducci is a controversial character. Now, I have made this series of books called Confessions of an Illuminati. I arrived to 4 volumes, and in volume 3 I show an image which is very controversial, which shows Corrado Balducci together with the chief Satanist of that time, which was called Ephraim Del Gatto, together participating in a ritual exorcism. Now, how is possible that the Vatican chief demonologist is together with the chief Satanist, Papa Neo, they used to call him in Rome, Ephraim Del Gatto, and we actually have a photo that shows this collaboration between the Vatican and Satanists. But there is more to this. There is a satanic sects in the Vatican that operate since ancient times. There is a place called San Benedetto in Piscinibus, which is on the near Borgo Santo Spirito, near where the Jesuits have their headquarters. It's inside there that they do the most satanic rituals in the Vatican. And it's right, the core of Vatican Satanism is right there. But is this Satanism or is this ancient paganism? Because we are talking here about ancient artifacts that predate Christianity. And these beliefs were not really cast out of Rome once the Vatican established itself. They were co-opted in.
We have the testimony of Leo Zagami of the satanic and occult practices taking place at the Vatican. And it can be assumed by his information that they were worshiping Satan himself. We were told by Faramonti that although the Vatican initially disagreed with Sitchin's position on Nibiru and the Anunnaki, they later came to agree with him 100%. Balducci, who Sitchin befriended, was also a very close friend of the Pope. He was the Vatican's chief demonologist. And more importantly, he was also the Church's point man for the UFO and alien encounters, as well as being responsible for introducing new theology and doctrine on the issue. It's easy to see how Balducci might have swayed Vatican opinion in favor of Sitchin's position. Given this background, it's apparent by Tom Horn and Chris Putnam's experience at the Vatican Observatory that Sitchin was successful in convincing the Vatican that Nibiru is coming. Now, the Vatican astronomers' only job on Mount Graham, according to their own testimony, is to use their multi-million-dollar telescope and the Lucifer device to watch that incoming planet very closely.
And they are constantly monitoring things with the Lucifer device. Now, they would not allow us to see what the Lucifer device was watching, but we were told that it was very specifically monitoring something in deep space. They were very cryptic about it. Again, seemed to be echoing what Malachi Martin had said, that they were watching a specific something that is approaching the Earth. And as the engineer is talking about the Lucifer device and deep space and all that, he just blurts out something that we didn't even ask. And he starts talking about how sometimes they have to wait for all of the UFOs to get out of the way so that they could look at other things in space. And they're not talking about space debris and asteroids. They're talking about what appear to be intelligently operated craft of some type that evidently fill deep space.
We have 11 different types of geopenetrating radars to complement each other. That way nothing is missed.
Another interesting aspect of the artifacts found by our archaeological team in Mexico was how many showed winged aliens interacting with mankind, just as ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, and Egyptian artifacts depict. The representation of winged alien creatures takes us right back to Genesis and the fallen angels' sexual corruption of mankind. And the significance of their interaction with humanity will become very important in a moment.
What do the Apache Indian believe about Mount Graham? They believe that that entire area down there, what's now the Valley of the Sun, Phoenix and the surrounding area, Tucson, Mount Graham, they believe that entire area is connected with history that sounds identical to what happened in ancient biblical history. First of all, they say that in the time before time, a giant silvery disc descended down over the top of the mountain. And in it, they say, sit a bearded man. He was the creator of all things. But actually, the Bible also talks about God being transported in angelic transportation devices, the most famous being Ezekiel, and it's circular, wheels in the middle of a wheel on which God is transported. So these are very mysterious things, but when you understand that that's part of true biblical history, then it makes you think about what we would call UFO activity as being both good and evil, that there could be things that appear, they move about in the sky, then they leave. Maybe these are angels. We don't know. So when the Apache say, in the time before time, a giant silvery disc came down over the mountain, and in it sat a bearded man, and he began to create all of the good and wonderful things that are upon the earth, that isn't necessarily supporting an ancient astronaut theory. It could simply be somehow they became aware of this knowledge from the Middle East, from the Hebrew scriptures, and they adopted it into their most ancient belief system. But then they say the vortex opened again, and this next time they say another man came through the portal, but they say he wasn't really a man. They say he was a dragon. In fact, they describe him in very reptilian, dark, frightening features. And he came through and started deceiving all of the Indian people, started teaching them sorcery, witchcraft, genetics, started teaching them how to pollute themselves before God. And they started going down into their kivas, and instead of having essentially what we would call a church service in their kiva, they started performing sorcery. And what the Hopi call the sipapu, which is the symbolic entrance into the underworld that's in the kiva, they learned how to use pharmakia, sorcery, to open these doorways into the netherworld. And as they did, the Apache say, suddenly giants start coming through the gateways of the earth.
We have empirical evidence on film, and those artifacts show reptilian winged creatures that are not of this earth, and they are interacting with mankind at various times in history. We also have legends and petroglyphs in the southwest deserts of North America that show giants, aliens, flying craft, and spirals. Further, we also have stories and legends from Egypt to ancient Mesopotamia that describe reptilian creatures coming down from heaven and interacting with mankind. We are told that these creatures gave humanity technology and, more importantly, use advanced genetics to corrupt human DNA, as well as teaching them pharmakia and corrupting them morally as well. This corruption started all the way back in the book of Enoch, and it has not stopped to this day.
There appears to be a harmony between the book of Genesis in the Bible and the other pseudepigraphal books that have been previously mentioned, like the book of Enoch. Fallen angels, also known as the Nephilim and the Watchers, gave mankind knowledge and technology that they previously did not possess, nor should have. According to the Genesis account in the Bible, the fallen one's interference with mankind would eventually lead to the genetic corruption of the whole earth and its destruction by God with Noah's flood. This interference and corruption by fallen angels masquerading as aliens has not stopped in all of human history and has even accelerated in modern times. The problem is that this time their meddling and humanity's rebelliousness could lead to man's destruction if God did not intervene. Moreover, Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, the fabrication of mirrors, and the workmanship of bracelets and ornaments, the use of paint, the beautifying of the eyebrows, the use of stones of every valuable and select kind, and of all sorts of dyes, so that the world became altered. Impiety increased, fornication multiplied, and they transgressed and corrupted all their ways. Amazarach taught all the sorcerers and dividers of roots. Armirs taught the solution of sorcery. Barkael taught the observers of the stars. Akibiel taught signs. Tamiel taught astronomy. And Azaradel taught the motion of the moon. And men, being destroyed, cried out, and their voice reached to heaven.
Zechariah Sitchin stated that the Anunnaki gave advanced knowledge to the ancient Sumerians. It might have seemed like they were doing them a favor at the time. However, just like in the Bible, fallen angels do not give out information and technology out of altruism. As they did back then, these aliens have an agenda, and that agenda is the complete corruption and annihilation of mankind.
You remember 20 years ago, an IBM PC with 50 megabytes. How big was the memory? Now you can have 50 gigabytes. It's 1,000 more memory in a square centimeter or less a square millimeter. Do you believe this technology is terrestrial? No one on Earth has that technology. Think about it.
It is the gates that are opening. Even people like Steve Jobs opened up to other dimensions to get their information in what, he did it, of course, artificially, using LSD. Some people did it in other ways. But by doing that, you're opening up to other levels. And those other levels are transmitting you that knowledge. Isaac Newton did that. So, of course, what I think Ferramonti is saying today is that, in a way, people that have this special link with new technology can be also related in a way to what you call the alien phenomenon.
Those fallen angels have seduced mankind with their knowledge, technology, and power. They convinced Sitchin, the Vatican, and other world leaders that there is a being living on Earth who is an alien Anunnaki, and that he is running this planet. This information directly correlates to Ephesians 6:12, referenced earlier, and the original Greek that translates as a ruler of this world. In addition, we are specifically told that this alien's name is Lucifer, and we are told that he is innocently waiting for his space brothers to return to Earth from Nibiru. However, the Bible tells us that this being didn't arrive on a spaceship thousands of years ago. He has been here all along. He was cast out of heaven because of his pride and for wanting to be like the Most High. He is Apollyon. He is Abaddon. He is Beelzebub, the accuser of the brethren, the father of lies, the great red dragon, the devil. Despite the lies of these gods with a little g and the humans that worship and serve them, he is Satan himself.
The eyes and hopes of the world are upon you, to act with all dispatch and decisively, because time has quite literally run out.
The thief cometh not, but for to steal, and to kill, and to destroy. Because of Zecharia Sitchin's misunderstanding of the Genesis 6 narrative and his willingness to be deceived by the fallen angels, Sitchin was launched down a dangerous path in which he would unwittingly assist modern-day Nephilim to deceive hundreds of millions of people. Through his 15 published books and numerous lectures and appearances, he built a cult-like following. All of it based upon the belief that aliens are humanity's creators and that they will come back to save us. This is the end times great deception. Those ancient fallen angels will return to Earth masquerading as our alien saviors. And this is also the greatest supernatural setup in human history.
Breaking news now from the west coast of Canada, the United States, and Central and South America, as well as Japan and Russia. Wait, is this right? I'm being told that numerous, and I mean hundreds, if not thousands, of white orbs or UFOs, whatever you want to call them, are being seen hanging in the sky above these areas. People are worried about some sort of invasion. Wait, is this a joke? No, people are worried, it says, about an extraterrestrial invasion force. The militaries of these countries have all indicated that these craft are not theirs. They've also stated that these UFOs have not made any aggressive actions, so for now we're simply watching.
In Hosea 6:4, God states that his people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just spent over an hour blowing the lid off a deception that has taken centuries, if not millennia, to construct. We produced this film to give you the knowledge that you need to survive what is to come. Over the course of this film, we have exposed the alien seduction of humanity and their plans for mankind's ultimate destruction. These plans are based upon the lies that the aliens, fallen angels, and their human collaborators would have rather remain hidden. Specifically, the UFO cover-up and cover-over that has been occurring for the last 70 years was designed to hide the fallen angels' agenda. That is an end game that they would have rather unveiled on their own terms when they were ready. Unfortunately for them, we have beaten them to the punch. Now you know what their true intentions are. Throughout modern times, humanity has been conditioned, even pre-programmed, for that fateful day. It won't be a time of panic or fear of invasion as so many science fiction movies depict. It will be a time of awe and wonder, just as the Bible said it would be. On that day, alien vessels will fill our skies. They will land in a prominent place, and then they will declare their lie to the world. We are your creators, and we are here to save you. Don't believe them. They are the lies of men and gods with a little g. The Bible states in Revelation 13:13 that the Antichrist, with the help of these fallen angels, will do great wonders and make fire fall from the sky. We also see in the book of Daniel that the little horn will even cause some stars to fall from heaven. These are the signs and the wonders that will be performed by these beings and their chosen Antichrist. Don't be fooled. They are counterfeits, just as Pharaoh's magicians were counterfeits when they tried to copy God's plagues on Egypt. In addition, the return of these so-called Anunnaki will be the launching of wholesale genetic manipulation by the fallen angels. What they could not do by tainting our air, our climate, our water, our food, and even our medicines, they will do in one fell swoop using their technology with mankind's help in our own destruction. There will be only one way to stand in this evil day, and that is hiding in Jesus under the shadow of his wings. The scripture's true when it says that in him, Jesus, we live and move and have our being. And if we stand in him, we have eternal life with him. If we are to survive, if we are to walk as God's people in these days, we must learn to be living, breathing Sermons on the Mount. God's word needs to be part of us and in us. We must be able to hear his still small voice and to move in the dynamic power of the Holy Spirit. Only then will we be more than conquerors through Jesus Christ, who strengthens us no matter what the fallen ones may throw at us. Lastly, don't fear that which lies ahead. Trust in Jesus, and you too will have the peace that surpasses all understanding. And most importantly, as we see the unveiling of the Anunnaki for who they really are, understand that the time is very short, and that very soon, as the Bible states, Jesus at his second coming will slay them with the breath of his mouth. Never before have these words been as true as they are right now. As we move into the end of the season and the second coming of Jesus Christ approaches, look up, brothers and sisters, for our redemption draws nigh.
Then there shall be great tribulation, such as not seen since the beginning of the world to this time, nor will there ever be again. And except those days should be shortened, there would be no flesh saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, who shall show great signs and wonders, so that, if it were possible, they could deceive even the very elect.